guys and welcome back to my channel. This is Making Spirituality Real with Jade, and this is another addition to my Peace of Mind corner. So today I wanted to make a video that is potentially triggering for many, especially the target audience who is interested in the spiritual, current spiritual topics. But I believe it's very necessary given that we live in a world and that we live in a society that actively works to disempower us and to hinder our own healing. So before you make any judgments or conclusions, please hear me out and understand that what I'm saying is in your highest good, and it does not invalidate your experiences or your suffering or anything else that you might have been through, and also that I on a personal level have been through those things that I'm going to discuss. And that is just the benefit of my experience with myself and others, the clients and the friends that I heal, people that I healed, that I have met in my daily life. And I realized that some of you may not be ready for this message, but it's okay. Even if you're not ready today, maybe a seed is going to be planted in your subconscious and it's going to grow in a couple of days, weeks, months, years. Doesn't matter, as long as this is out there. That's what matters to me, because it needs to be put out there and because it's not talked about enough. And today we're going to talk about why and how the so common, the so popular diagnosis of mental illness is fake, is not real, and is not an accurate representation of the condition of the human mind, the human subconscious, the human psychology. Now, the fundamental flaw with this approach, with dividing people between those who are mentally ill or mentally sick, so people call it neurodivergent and neurotypical, I believe, is that there's a fake assumption behind this that states that people are divided into normal and not normal, into those that are sick and those who are ill, into those who are doing well and those who are not doing well, into those who are primarily and fundamentally psychologically disadvantaged and those who have the advantage of being normal. That is completely false. It is true that our souls incarnate for a different purpose, for various purposes, each and every one of us. And it's true that some souls have a more technically easier path because this is what their incarnation chose in this lifetime, while some other souls have a harder time with things. But the truth is that a very big part of this discrimination, this split, comes from more so those who have had experiences that trigger them enough to awaken the process of ancestral healing and uproot centuries of traumas, and those who stay on the surface level of life enough so that their souls were not triggered into starting this process. And so they have the luxury, if you may call it so, they made the choice, they have the path of staying more so on the surface level of physical things in this life, because this is what their soul chose for this growth in this incarnation. And that is okay, because this is what the soul chose, this is what the soul needs to do for its own benefit. Maybe this person suffered a lot in their last lifetime, you don't know that. But that doesn't mean that if put in a different circumstances, this person would not react the exact same way as the person that is technically called neurodivergent or different than the norm. The reality is that there is no norm. There is no normal, because everything is normal at the same time. And there is not a single person that would not crumble under the pressure of certain external events that cause suffering and character growth. It simply comes down to a choice of, will I go through the transformative experience of sinking to the depths of life, which also includes suffering and possibly a path through what is commonly labeled as mental illness, or will I choose something else? Did my soul put me in a position fundamentally since childhood where I was forced to deal with those subjects? Or was I put in a position of more so financial comfort or some sort of psychological ease that made me focus on more so the superficial aspects of life and adhere to the mainstream society rules? Now, me saying that the whole concept of labeling people mentally ill is fake does not mean that people's suffering is not real. Naturally, trauma is very real. Psychological shock is very real. Suffering is very real and exists for a purpose. And if you are someone who is suffering a lot, I am in no way trying to invalidate your experience, because of course you have the right to it. I'm not trying to label it as less than. But ironically, by allowing someone or diagnosing yourself as mentally ill you are allowing the world to label you as less than. Think about what kind of effects this attitude creates in global consciousness. We now have a society that's divided into those who are normal, aka they can conform to a normal work, sleep, work cycle on a very high performative level, and those who cannot do it. And all of those who, for some reason, cannot do it are labeled outcasts. They are labeled mentally ill for some reason. There have been a million diagnoses invented to this. And all of this was created in order to stigmatize those whose souls, for some spiritual reason or another, resist the mainstream grind, the mainstream attitude that wants to put us all in the box. Another very common misconception that doctors in the psychological and psychiatric profession try to put on us nowadays is that you need to go through a certain school that needs to train you to think a certain way to have the authority to speak on these subjects, which completely diminishes our own power and tries to deny us our ability to have an inherent knowing, our claircognizant abilities that we can all have by tapping into the Akashic records. And another thing that is happening is trying to make people believe that there's only one path to healing. And everyone who needs to heal needs to follow that pre-approved path. Very sadly, this path is a path of destruction. It's not a path of healing, it's a trap that you are being caught into most probably because this is something that surrounds you from all sides and you need to be extra cautious to avoid that trap. Why? Because the modern healing system, which I've had contact with, is based on trying to turn you against yourself. One of the first things that you'll most probably hear if you are depressed or if you have any of the list of commonly encountered disorders that are now popular in mental consciousness is that you will hear that your physical brain is actively working against you in some way. They will tell you that there is something wrong with your brain, there's something wrong with your neurons. Now, what does this conviction do to global consciousness? It disempowers you fundamentally because it makes you think that you are your own worst enemy and that there is something fundamentally defective in the way your mind and body operates, which can only be cured by taking a pre-approved, a pre-designed dose of medication from the outside, which in fact is a weapon of destruction to disconnect you from yourself. Now, I am here to tell you that no matter how much suffering your mind causes you, no matter how much pain, how much anguish, and how much difficulty and how much toxicity and negativity you have in your mind is always your friend. Your mind exists to point you towards what needs healing. So if there is a painful experience coming up, this is your mind's attempt at bringing it up to your attention so that you can heal it. Now, what is most commonly labeled as healing in nowadays society is trying to stuff, kill, extinguish the very voice that we are biologically and spiritually programmed with for good reason. A voice that exists to guide us towards the completion inside ourselves. We are systemically forced and socially conditioned to get rid of the one weapon that we are biologically equipped with to help ourselves in this world, our instinct. We are conditioned from the youngest age to go against our primal instincts that exist to help us and protect us. We are being stripped of our basic self-defense, self-protection mechanism, and we are being told that this is healing. Naturally, the truth is that this is the opposite of healing. Healing does not involve you silencing anything that happens to you. Healing involves giving yourself all the time, energy, and necessary presence to heal every negative emotion, every reaction that may come towards you from the inside. Everything that may raise up needs to be embraced and dealt with. Now, by labeling people socially, and also by us labeling ourselves individually as mentally ill, not only do we not face the actual problem that we have, we don't face the suffering that we're actually carrying, we don't deal with the karma that our souls incarnated to choose to deal with, we also develop an extra problem that this situation presents. We start to feel less than. We start to feel like we are missing out on life because we can't be like those who don't have problems. Reality check, everyone has problems. A soul that doesn't have anything to solve does not incarnate on this planet. A soul incarnates here for a specific experience. So if you are alive, if you are incarnated, you have problems to solve because it's part of being human. And no one's problems are really better than anyone else's because your problems are what your soul picked to deal with, so they are the most precious to you because on some higher level, you wanted them. You wanted them so that you could deal with them. It sounds very paradoxical when this involves a high level of suffering or abuse, which I understand that may be hard to swallow. I'm making a disclaimer here that it's not like I don't understand what these things are and not like I haven't dealt with them or haven't seen them. I'm not someone who comes from a privileged position in any way, more so the opposite. So I'm talking to you as someone who, if you are diagnosed as mentally ill, is somebody who has been through most of your experiences. I am someone who understands suffering, who is familiar with it, who has had mostly it through most of her life. So what I'm saying does not come from being naive or from lack of experience. But it is my intention to free you from that first problem that you might have, which is believing that you are somehow socially stigmatized, or that you are inferior, or that there is something wrong with you for having a specific problem with yourself. Now, why is diagnosing yourself so popular? Why have people responded to it? Because you might think, well, wait a second, if people feel so bad through being diagnosed, if it makes them feel so inferior, if it makes them feel so uncomfortable, so bad, why does it keep happening? The truth is that systemic oppression would not work if it was not playing on some fundamental need or some fundamental instinct inside the human consciousness. Because a diagnosis gives us a false feeling of clarity, a false feeling of a quick solution, and a false feeling of belonging with those who have the same diagnosis. Why do I call this feeling false? Because the belonging you find in this dimension is basically designed to get you this belonging through a feeling of disempowerment. But no matter how many problems you have, how many struggles you deal with in your daily life, nothing should make you feel invalid or outcast or disconnected from other people. So essentially connecting people through being disconnected is a gathering of people who feel like they are socially incapacitated, like they are socially disabled, and who, until they are cured, will always be less than those who seemingly don't have problems. That perception is completely false. If you have this kind of attitude, if you view yourself as someone who is mentally ill, deficient, or lower because you can't fit into a regular job, you will never feel better. Because you are essentially going through life with the perception that there is something fundamentally wrong about you as a human being. If you go through life with this kind of perception, you will take actions, you will choose situations, and you will limit yourself through that core belief that you are on a losing position. It is very hard for us to understand as human beings, but just because you have difficulties, sometimes even extreme ones, just because you experience suffering in your family home, does not mean that you can't also have advantages or even happiness in life. Happiness does not mean being content 24/7. Happiness often is just a moment. Let's think of it this way. Every human being on this planet has problems, but also every human being has experienced a feeling of happiness, even if it was fleeting. This life is not black and white. Just because you experience extreme anguish does not mean that you can't experience happiness. The only thing that diagnosing people as mentally ill leads to is a collective repression of human suffering, which is expressed through people repressing their own suffering on an individual level, multiplied throughout the planet. The thing is that repressing your suffering or your need for healing will not make the suffering go away or your need for healing go away. No matter how many pills you take, you still need to do the work with your unconscious self and your shadow self. There is no simple solution to suffering. This is the reality check that we are really trying to avoid. We think that by giving ourselves into the hands of someone more competent, by having this safety point, this diagnosis which explains to us what is wrong with us, we're going to find a path towards recovery. But what we need to embrace is that the entirety of our lives is a path towards recovery, and not just for you who thinks that you're mentally ill or deficient in some way. For everyone, we are all born trying to find healing, completion, and recovery in some way. And even if your issues are more serious or more psychologically challenging, the process itself is not different for you than for anyone else. One of the most important things for humanity right now is breaking this division between those who are supposedly not suffering and those who are supposedly suffering. Notice how this trend has progressed in society and how this healing of this division is taking place right now. What's happening is that instead of this divide being bridged, instead of people reconnecting, we observe more and more people getting diagnosed. We observe the whole diagnosis being spread among bigger and bigger groups of people. Now, What is the end goal of the situation? What will happen in the long run? People will discover that every single person has some sort of diagnosis. Every person has some sort of brain malfunction. Again, I cannot stress this enough. There is no such a thing as a brain malfunction. There is no one good average way that your brain is supposed to work. If for some reason your brain is physically working differently than those of other people, that is for a reason, and that is the reflection of your psyche, your psychology, and your soul, and it's supposed to be this way. And trying to make everyone be the same goes against human nature, goes against the diversity, the beauty, the complexity of human nature. It will never happen, and it will never work, and it will always cause suffering, because it always means a repression of a fundamental part of your individual self, which is the part that you actually should cherish the most. Now, I don't know how much you are ready to embrace the more so conspiracy theory part of this message, but it will be enough for me today if you take it with yourself that the system that you are using fundamentally to try to heal is designed to actively work for your disempowerment. Now, the one commonly acceptable form of healing that might be useful to you is therapy. Why? Because therapy with a good therapist, a therapist that actually pays attention to your individuality and is not too caught into trying to diagnose you too intensely, but is instead looking at you as a person and trying to offer individual solutions to your suffering, is someone trying to guide you on your path towards individual healing. That is something that you need to do. There is nothing wrong with needing assistance in helping yourself in the healing process. But if you find your experience with going to a therapist something gruesome, something you dread, this is not something you should be doing. Because the truth is that we should all have a therapist, we should all have someone to talk to about our struggles as they continue through our lives. It is not something that we will ever stop needing. Needing someone to guide us or help us with our suffering is a fundamental human need that continues from birth till death. And that is universal to all of us. So it's not like some of us need a therapist, while some of us don't need a therapist. All of us need a helping hand because we all have a need for connection in our suffering. The difference is that some people's needs become so urgent and so alarming that they can't ignore them anymore, and they can't numb themselves with work and practical tasks enough. So they turn to those socially pre-approved ways of trying to heal themselves in order to suit their healing. But notice the common way of approaching the subject. We don't want to embrace our suffering. We don't want to look at it and take it as our friend and use it for growth or use it to transform. We want to kill it. The first instinct we have with our suffering is that we want to get rid of it. We want to sweep it under the rug. We want to not have to look at it anymore. And most modern concepts of healing are designed this way. Most people are not concerned with why they are suffering, they just want to not suffer anymore. Again, I'm here to give you a reality check. Just because you feel uncomfortable looking at why you're suffering does not mean that you don't have to do it. The only way out of the suffering is through. You have to go through the suffering and healing process in order to get anywhere, in order to ironically get more healed. With this video, I want to end the shame spiral that we are on socially, collectively. I want to end the mass prejudice against those who express their suffering openly and those who live by stuffing it through their subconscious, which then starts manifesting as various physical diseases in the physical body. I want to end the division between those who seemingly suffer and those who seemingly not, through making you realize that there is no division. At the end of the day, we are all one. We are part of the same energy. We are part of the same consciousness. And in our suffering, we are all alike. The primary reason why there is no such thing as mental illness is that suffering is normal. It's something that nobody talks about, but it really is. It is not the natural state of humankind, but it is common. And it happens to everyone. Suffering is not a preferable state spiritually, but it is a state commonly occurring in us as human beings. Feeling like you are somehow outcast through being diagnosed does not lead to resolving your suffering. It leads to further repression of your fundamental problems instead of looking at them and embracing them. The first barrier to awareness that we have is our fear that Gaining the self-awareness would mean diving into things that are socially unacceptable. Since we are social species as human beings, since we need the social connection, the social approval, we will go to great lengths to mask our true feelings just to gain a semblance, an inch of social acceptance. The sad truth is that none of these paths lead to healing. The main reason why it would benefit humankind to end the whole process of diagnosing people as mentally ill today is that diagnosing someone as mentally ill does not lead to recovery. This is the saddest conclusion that I'll make in this video today, is that the system that is socially designed for healing does not lead to healing at all. It leads to further repression, further shame, further stigmatization, and further division in the mass human consciousness. However, this is changing gradually as through internet we have more and more individuals expressing themselves and spreading their healing message outside of the systemic confines, which is an excellent tool for actual self-empowerment and actual healing. The other thing we need to understand, if you are afraid because your diagnosis gives you a feeling of safety, is that there are plenty of free resources for you to actually take care of your spiritual well-being. And the other thing you need to realize is that once you let go of that which doesn't serve you, once you detach yourself from the systemic version of the illusion of healing, the universe will provide you with tools for actual healing. The universe's goal is your healing. The universe's goal is your happiness that can only be achieved through healing and reconnecting to these parts of yourself that you feel that you have lost along the way. The universe is the only healer, the only doctor that you will ever need. You are part of this universe. Do not be afraid to detach from the socially pre-approved ways of dealing with your pain. You will see that once you do that, you will be given real solutions that actually make you reconnect with yourself, help you deal with the feeling of shame and stigma for being who you are in the first place. And remember, if you are diagnosed as mentally ill, this doesn't define you. This is not who you are, and there is nothing wrong with you, no matter how much suffering you endure and no matter how unbalanced you may feel, no matter how much internal chaos you may carry. There never was, and there is nothing wrong with you, and there is a place for you in this world. All you need to do is have the courage to go through the healing and the difficulty to find that place. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you can take this message to use it for your advantage and find actual healing and actual completion within yourself. If you need an individual healing session, I'm an astrologer and tarot reader, but I'm also a spiritual healer. So if you go to my links down below, you can find my Etsy shop where you can book a private reading with me, where we can pour over your individual problems, and I can help you find a path towards healing that is tailored individually to you. You can also find links to my other social media where you can gain free access to my writing on my Facebook page and my Tumblr blog where I answer community questions. Thank you so much if you have stayed with me till the end. I really hope this message uplifts you, makes you feel understood, connected, and makes you realize how valid your experience is and how unnecessary any social stigma that you carry within you is, and how removed from the actual spiritual truth of your soul it is. Remember that no matter how bad you may feel, you are powerful within yourself. Everyone is powerful within themselves in their own unique way. And we sadly live in a society that is designed to strip us of this power. I also encourage you to watch my video that is called How to Free Yourself from the Matrix, in which I discuss a very specific article that puts it down into words in a very nice, concise form. In this video, I dissect this article to describing more how the society is designed to, in many ways, work against you. And this article, I think, would be a nice background for you to realize that the way people are treated with their suffering is just a part of a bigger web that is designed to enslave our energies. I promise you that the individual healing you will embark on when you let go of systemic ways of healing will lead you to more personal empowerment, more freedom than you will ever find anywhere else. And that is what I wish to give to all of you with my work. This is why I chose to do what I do, because I want every single one of you to feel empowered in who you are. And I want you all to feel unconditionally validated with your experience, no matter how hard it is. Thank you for watching this video. See you guys. Bye.